Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In my work, I use Microsoft 365 and I realized that I actually only use a few apps, specifically the ones I can install on my desktop. Today, I want to show you how you can use the Microsoft 365 suite more comprehensively and sustainably. Basically, it makes sense to use the Microsoft 365 suite in the browser because you have access to all the different apps there. It doesn't really matter whether you're working with Windows or Mac. You can install all apps on both devices. I didn't realize this for a long time, but once I discovered that I could work much more efficiently with the browser, it became a no-brainer for me to use the browser. That's why I decided to consciously use the Microsoft Edge browser, not Chrome, which also works, or Safari. But with Microsoft Edge, I have a browser that is developed by Microsoft itself and naturally supports many features of the Microsoft 365 suite. And Edge works similarly, or rather the Microsoft suite is similarly stable in both browsers because they have the same foundation. Okay, let's take a look at how we can set up the browser effectively and how we can use the Microsoft 365 Office suite on it. When you start the browser, you get this start window. If you haven't installed the browser yet, I'll link the download link below, or you can just Google Microsoft Edge and you'll find the page. When you start the browser, you come to this window, and it's obviously very unproductive to have so much information right at the beginning when you actually want to work and are bombarded with info. That's why I set everything here very restrictively. That means I go to the site settings here and can now say, first, select the language. Directly to the left, these are these links here. I don't use them. If you want to use them, you can reduce them here so that you only have direct links to the Office suite or have additional links. For me, it's a distraction, and I use these links differently. I'll show that later. That's why I turn it off completely, so I only have the search window. I still leave the new tab option on, so when I click on something, a new tab opens. I hide all the information so I don't want anything in there. Background is a matter of personal taste. I usually turn it on. Then you have a background image here, which I find inspiring. It's nice to have a different picture now and then. You could also install something yourself here. I usually leave the weather at the top on as well. I find that a nice touch. This way, the home page is set up. So, when I open a new page, a new tab, or restart the browser, I have a clean home page and can start either with research or directly in my Office environment. The next step is to sign into Microsoft 365 and then log in here. I am already logged in with my personal account. I don't have the business account here, otherwise, I would log in here or through this button, and then I would be logged in. Automatically, when you are logged in, these 9 dots will appear here. This is also the so-called hamburger menu, which allows you to access your suite. And you see, when I click on it, I have the various Office apps here. This is already an extreme productivity boost because I have all the apps directly here, or I can access various apps through more apps like Forms, Lists, Loop, Sway. These are all apps that I can't use on the desktop. That's why I find it really helpful to be directly in the browser. You can close the other windows or tabs here. Now, once you have logged in and set up the home page, you can go to the home page of the Microsoft environment. Next, I set up a personal profile. As you can see here, I have various profiles saved, which means I can adjust my profiles depending on the work context or user context. For example, I have a separate profile for my work. You can see that I have set it up in such a way that the employer's logo is included, indicating that I am in my employer's environment. Here, I can also directly access the various apps. And the cool thing about these profiles is that they are synchronized. This means synchronization is enabled, and you can set it up through the account so that it gets synchronized. This way, I can open Microsoft Edge on another device, install the profile, and my various settings will be synchronized across devices, which is super convenient. That means when I go to my workplace, I open Microsoft Edge, and I have the 3 or 4 different profiles here. I can switch between them and always have my links and documents readily available to work with. You can create a profile by clicking on New Personal Profile at the bottom. These are the private accounts like Microsoft Live. Then there are additional profiles, meaning if you have a business account or one from a university or school, you can set up the business profile here. When I start it, a new window opens. I am asked here whether the data should be synchronized or imported. I choose to start without data. I don't want to allow that. Now I can set up the profile color here. Again, you can set up different colors for the profiles, which helps me with my work by knowing, okay, yellow is my personal profile, and maybe bubblegum pink is my work profile. You get it. Then I can finish setting it up and get an overview here. I can also log into my account, my Microsoft account, and make various settings here. See, we have set up the basic settings to be able to work. Now there are a few nice-to-have tricks to make the work a bit more efficient and to really be able to work well in the browser. First, I often use the favorites list. This means I have my favorites displayed here, and I can use these 3 dots. By the way, 3 dots always indicate additional functions in the Microsoft 365 environment. And I set it so that the list is always shown. And with that, I have a space down here where I can save links. I actively use this, not so much the hamburger menu, but I actively store links in my favorites list. That means I have the Microsoft 365 homepage here. Personally, I work like this. I rename via edit. Usually, I remove the name entirely and just keep the icon. I simply take the apps I use frequently and add them to my favorites list. I often need OneDrive, directly accessing my own files. Then Outlook, you need to log in here. Teams. I use OneNote a lot. Let's get it here via Outlook Calendar. Now you can get other apps here, that's individual of course. Then I would sort everything, so Start, then Outlook Calendar, Teams, OneNote. That's roughly the order in which I use the apps. Good. And with that, I've simply completed my work or supported my workflow. I restart the browser, have a new window here. You see, I'm on the Start page and can start right away. Now I'm working here, maybe still have Teams open. Then let's say I'm researching a page, maybe still Time Online's still open, then you might have various websites open here, just working on something, doing some research. At this point, you might have multiple tabs open, and you can manage them by right-clicking on a tab and selecting Add Tab to New Group. Now you can create groups. And I can also assign a color to the group, for example, red. I can now add the tabs I'm currently working on to this group and then close the group. I can do the same for another group. Here, I have the one I just created, and I create a new group and call it M365. Maybe I'll choose green for this one. Add these items here, and I already have a bit more organization. I can simply open and close these groups depending on what I'm working on. I also find a huge advantage in the browser, as I can easily switch between these different tabs for the functions I'm currently using, which helps me maintain my work or focus by opening and closing them, allowing me to stay more concentrated. There's simply less risk of getting distracted. Again, the situation where you might really want to focus on opening a file on the desktop to have a broader range of functions in the app, or you want to work concentratedly on a file, and that supports or can support this workflow in the browser as well. Let's say I want to open a file online here and then edit it. That means I would open a new tab here, knowing that I have stored the files here, for example, the file Edward Business Plan. And I could now go to these three dots and say I could either open and edit it directly in the browser. But you can already see that the functionality is a bit different. Microsoft is working on it, and it's getting closer and closer. However, there's still a difference when I actually open the file in the app, and then I'm in Word. Here it's also about being able to work more focused, and then really work directly in the file. By the way, you can see here automatic saving. This means the file is directly synchronized in the background. So if I write something here, it means if I open it again in the browser, for example, we have Hello Georg here, and I can also see that I'm editing here. Exactly. This way I can directly open the files I want to focus on editing again in the desktop app. I can also, if I want to keep the tab open longer, drag it into my tab group. For example, if I'm working on a concept, I would drag it in here, and then I have a tidier overview and can continue working.